The conference realignment rumor mill churned out another big one today, and it involves all teams from the Big 12. KU and Iowa State to the Big 10, K-State and Oklahoma State to the Pac-12, and West Virginia to the ACC. This info comes from an employee of Fox. But how reliable is it? That's the question that I'm going to answer for you today here on the channel. If you have not subscribed, please do. I am John Kurtz. I talk college football every day on this channel. Right now, that means conference realignment every single day on this channel. And please do like and comment on the videos. It really does help me out, especially, hey, if you guys are Big 12 fans, hop in there, man. I'm trying to give the Big 12 a voice right now when there's not much of one nationally. So on a day today in which all the talk around college football is about the Alliance press conference that happened with the Pac-12, Big 10, and ACC commissioners, it honestly fell kind of flat and leaves you with a lot of questions in the wake of said press conference. More on that coming up in later videos. Plus, George Kliavkoff, the Pac-12 commissioner, did tell The Athletic today that the league will have a decision on expansion by the end of the week. So that's even a more expedited timeline than the last video I talked to you about when it was, hey, in the next couple of weeks, we'll have that figured out. So there's a ton of news happening all over the place. But in Big 12 country, the day got started with this rumor from Dave Wannstedt. Now, most of you will recognize Dave Wannstedt, obviously, as a former NFL head coach and a college head coach. He has also been an analyst with Fox going all the way back to 2014. So that is what makes this more intriguing than just a random coach randomly spouting this off. Now, Wannstedt went on 670 The Score in Chicago, great radio station that does very well out there, and dropped this.
I was at the Fox meetings in in Phoenix a week ago, and we were talking, and a lot of the Big Ten people were all there.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the Big 12, and you hit it, Molly, right on the head. The Big 12, we know that Oklahoma and Texas are gone. And for any of our listeners, it sounds like Oklahoma State and Kansas State are going to the Pac-12, so that's done. It sounds like West Virginia is going to end up in the ACC, which would make sense with Virginia, Pitt, everybody there. And it sounds like but Iowa State and Kansas are going to join. They're the two schools that are going to probably join the Big Ten here locally.
Wow.
Now, this obviously created a lot of buzz in Big 12 country, particularly among KU Twitter. That's where it really came to my doorstep, which makes sense, obviously, being in Manhattan, Kansas. But also, it's the fact that Mike Vernon got behind it, and he has been somewhat of a newsbreaker before in the past for things regarding Kansas athletics. You may also remember Mike Vernon as the guy who reported KU to the Big Ten was imminent, or in his words said sources told him KU to the Big Ten was imminent. This was weeks ago. He then walked that back after his radio appearance on 610 Sports in Kansas City where he said that. So when Mike Vernon gets behind it, that generates plenty of discussion among Kansas fans. Here's the deal today with this rumor. I did some digging. I did a little checking around. And what I would tell you is that in my relatively educated opinion, I would not put any stock into what Dave Wannstedt said on 670 The Score in Chicago. I know you can roll your eyes at me. You can say, hey, how sourced up are you? How many sources do you really have? I'm not here to play that game. I will just remind you that this report would actually be great for my alma mater and the team that I cover, Kansas State, the school that I cover, if they were able to get out to the Pac-12. This would be a much better landing spot than what most people think will happen right now. And I'm sitting here telling you, I don't believe this to be true. So you can take it or leave it. That's fine. I'm just giving you my opinion based on what I have heard and doing some digging around today. I think the problem with these and a lot of the rumors that get out there is just a confirmation bias that happens. If you're a fan, you're heavily invested in your school, you want the best and you want to believe the best case scenario for your school. So when you see something like this, if you're an Iowa State fan, if you're a Kansas fan, if you're a West Virginia fan, whatever it might be, you're going to get really fired up and excited about this because you want to believe it. And we see this all the time in conference realignment. So it makes sense that Kansas fans would be more fired up about this than anybody that I've seen out there today. Kansas fans not only are heavily invested in wanting to get into the Big Ten, but there have already been some reports out there. There have been some people with credibility in the past who have put this out there, and so they're very much wanting to believe it and wanting those reports to be accurate for a number of different reasons. And look, I don't even totally blame them because that's the best landing spot that's been mentioned possible for anybody in the league. I would be very excited about that possibility if I were a Kansas fan. I just don't think it's in the cards, particularly right now. Ultimately, I will just repeat the same thing that I've said about Kansas before, and this comes from not just my own personal opinion. Again, this is a relatively educated opinion. I don't think it's happening right now. I don't think anything is coming down the pipe for Kansas to the Big Ten right now. And hey, Kansas fans even picked up on some of the issues with this report and were saying like, wait, hold on, do we totally believe this? And this is something we can do besides me just telling you, hey, I've heard some things that would suggest this is not accurate and true right now. That is just walking this through logically. Number one, K-State to the Pac-12 is not totally out of the question, but typically that's always been as a part of a 4-team pod going out to the league. You've never seen them mention when it's just 2 teams. When it's been 2 teams, you're typically talking Oklahoma State and Texas Tech, which makes sense. If you're going to get into the central time zone, if you're the Pac-12, you would think you'd want to do it by getting into the state of Texas, the most fertile recruiting ground, big alumni bases in Dallas-Fort Worth for a school like Texas Tech, bigger markets, et cetera, et cetera. It would just help out your league much more than anywhere else would. And Oklahoma State makes sense because it is close to Texas. They recruit the heck out of Texas, and they've been, frankly, the most successful football program that is left among the 8 teams of the Big 12. So that was one thing that left you scratching your head. The other was just merely, yes, that there were no Texas schools involved here at all. And even beyond Kansas to the Big 10, Iowa State being included here. There has not been that much buzz about Iowa State to the Big 10. There's been a little bit, and you heard some of that at first because Iowa State is an AAU school, which the Big 10 likes. But look, Iowa State is basically Kansas just minus the national brand that is KU basketball. Iowa State has AAU status. They also have another school from the same state that is already in the league in the Big 10. So you're not expanding that footprint at all, which is another thing that really hurts Iowa State. And would Iowa want Iowa State in the Big 10? That's another roadblock there. So that's a head-scratching part of this. And even West Virginia to the ACC. Again, based on conversations that I've had, one of which you heard here on this channel with Mike Casazza, who covers West Virginia. Look, it is far from a sure thing that the ACC would wind up extending an invite to West Virginia at any point here. So all of this stuff doesn't really add up from a logical standpoint. Then you throw on top of it, however much you want to believe me, just what I have heard today and recently, and none of this really adds up and makes a lot of sense. So I hate to disappoint you if you are a fan of one of these schools, but I do think the reality is that this is not very accurate from Dave Wannstedt, even though he is somebody that works at Fox, and I would lend him more credibility than I would just a random coach popping off somewhere else on the radio. But it's conference realignment season, hashtag realignment season, and you're going to get some of this. It's going to create waves, and we are going to talk about it and address it here on this channel. Much more coming on the channel here in the next 24 hours. Update on the alliance and the press conference that took place between the 3 leagues, plus Oliver Luck being added to the Big 12 as a consultant. There is a lot going on this week that we are going to talk about, so please make sure you subscribe if you have not. Also, like and comment on the videos. It really does help me out. But talking college football every day here and trying to give the Big 12 a voice on this channel. You can follow me on Twitter at JLKurtz if you want more up-to-the-minute updates. You can find a link to that in the description here of this video. And if you want more content like my daily radio show, that info is also in the description of this video. Appreciate you guys watching, and I'll talk to you soon.